Sophia Grant stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back at her. The burgundy dress hugged curves she usually hid beneath loose sweaters and professional blouses. Her chestnut hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders instead of being pulled into its usual tight bun. The mascara made her green eyes look wider, brighter, almost defiant. She had owned this dress for 3 years. Never worn it. Never had a reason to. Tonight wasn't really a reason either, but it was something else. A statement. A goodbye that nobody would understand except her. Her phone sat on the counter beside her makeup bag. The Instagram app was already open. She angled the camera, checked the lighting, and took the photo before she could talk herself out of it. The mirror caught everything. The dress. The confident posture she didn't quite feel. The small smile that said she was moving forward. Her finger hovered over the post button. This was stupid. Childish, even. But 2 years of being invisible had worn her down to nothing. And she needed something. Anything. To prove she had existed in his world at all. She typed the caption quickly before logic could intervene. New chapter. Added a sparkle emoji. Posted. The phone lit up immediately with likes from friends, former classmates, the regular customers at the bar where she worked 3 nights a week. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that she had spent the last 24 months trapped in a professional purgatory of her own making. Sophia set the phone down and started removing the makeup. The dress would go back in the closet. Tomorrow she would return to being the woman Anthony Rinaldi saw every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. The competent translator with unremarkable features who processed his Italian documents without asking questions. Except tomorrow was actually the beginning of her last week. 5 more days, then she would board a bus to Boston and start over. The translation agency there had offered her a full-time position with benefits, steady hours, and absolutely no connection to organized crime or men with dark eyes who looked through her like she was furniture. Her phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Sophia ignored it, reaching for the makeup remover. Probably her friend Ashley commenting on the photo, demanding to know where she was going dressed like that. Ashley knew about the Boston job, but not about Anthony. Nobody knew about Anthony. There was nothing to know, really, except that Sophia had made the catastrophic mistake of falling in love with her employer, who treated her with the same warmth he showed his coffee maker. The buzzing stopped. Started again. A phone call this time. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Definitely Ashley using a different phone to be dramatic. Sophia declined the call and went back to wiping off her lipstick. Then the banging started. Sharp, insistent knocks on her apartment door that echoed through the small space. Sophia froze, makeup remover wipe pressed against her cheek. She lived alone in a 4th-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that was safe enough but not friendly enough for random visits at 11 at night. Her closest neighbor was an elderly woman who went to bed at 8. The knocking came again. Harder. More demanding. She grabbed her phone, pulled on the oversized cardigan hanging by the bathroom door, and approached the front door carefully. The peephole showed a figure she recognized instantly despite the distortion. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the black dress shirt and tailored pants that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Anthony Rinaldi was standing outside her apartment. Sophia's heart slammed against her ribs. In 2 years of working for him, he had never come to her home. She went to his mansion in the nice part of town, sat in his office, translated his documents, collected her payment, and left. That was the arrangement. That was the boundary. He knocked again. Her hands shook as she unlocked the deadbolt. The chain stayed on as she opened the door just wide enough to see him properly. He looked exactly as he did every time she saw him. Perfectly composed, intensely focused, and completely out of place in her shabby hallway with its peeling wallpaper and flickering light fixture. His dark hair was styled precisely. Not a strand out of place. His jaw was tight, a muscle flexing near his ear, and his eyes, those deep brown eyes that never really looked at her, were fixed on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. Mr. Rinaldi. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Is everything all right? Did something happen with the documents? Open the door. Not a request. A command. The same tone he used when discussing business with men twice his size who obeyed without question. It's late. Sophia said, aware of how weak the protest sounded. If there's an issue with the translation, I can come by the house tomorrow. Open the door, Sophia. He never used her first name. In 2 years, it had always been Miss Grant. Formal, professional, distant. Her fingers fumbled with the chain. She told herself it was because he was her employer, and she couldn't refuse. She told herself it was because something might genuinely be wrong. She didn't let herself acknowledge the real reason, that hearing her name in his voice did something to her that made rational thought impossible. The door swung open. Anthony stepped inside without waiting for invitation, and suddenly her small apartment felt even smaller. He took up too much space, made too much of an impression. The scent of his cologne filled the air, something expensive and woodsy that she had learned to associate with Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. He closed the door behind him, locked it. The click of the deadbolt sounded impossibly loud. What were you thinking? His voice was low, controlled, but there was something underneath it that Sophia had never heard before. Something rough. I don't understand. The photo. He pulled out his phone, turned the screen toward her. Her Instagram post glowed in the dim light of her apartment. What were you thinking posting this? Sophia's face heated. That's my personal account. I can post whatever I want. Who's going to see it? My friends. People I know. Nobody who... She stopped, realization dawning. You follow my Instagram? I asked you a question. And I asked you one. Sophia crossed her arms, the oversized cardigan bunching around her wrists. She was still wearing the burgundy dress underneath, suddenly hyper-aware of it. How do you even know my Instagram? I never told you. That's not relevant. It's relevant to me. They stared at each other. Sophia had never challenged him before, never pushed back, never done anything except nod politely and complete her work. 2 years of yes, sir, and right away, and I'll have that done by tomorrow. Anthony's jaw worked. He slipped his phone back into his pocket, then took a step closer. Sophia instinctively stepped back. Her spine hit the wall beside the door. You never wear dresses, he said. The observation came out flat, factual, but his eyes betrayed something else as they traveled down from her face to the burgundy fabric, to where the cardigan hung open. You never wear your hair down. You've been paying that much attention to what I wear? The words escaped before Sophia could stop them. Where were you going? Nowhere. I was home. I am home. Then why? He stopped himself, seemed to be choosing words carefully. Why post a photo like that? Like what? Like you're... Another pause. Like you're available. Sophia laughed. It came out sharp and bitter. Nothing like the quiet, professional version of herself she had maintained so carefully. Available? I posted a photo in a dress, Mr. Rinaldi. That doesn't make me available. And even if it did, what exactly would that have to do with you? His eyes snapped back to her face. Delete it. No. Sophia, no. She pushed away from the wall, forced herself to stand straighter even though her knees felt weak. You don't get to show up at my apartment at 11 at night and tell me what to do with my personal life. You're my employer. That's where your authority ends. Were you meeting someone? The question came out harder than the previous ones. Is that why you're dressed like this? Some man who what? Sophia's anger flared hot and bright. 2 years. 2 years of loving him silently, hopelessly, pathetically. 2 years of watching him look through her, past her, around her. And now he was standing in her apartment acting like he had any right to care about what she wore or who she saw. Some man who might actually notice I exist. Some man who might look at me like I'm a person instead of a piece of office equipment. The words hung between them. Sophia's breath came too fast, her heart hammering. She had said too much, revealed too much, destroyed the careful professional relationship she had built. Anthony went very still. His eyes searched her face, and for the first time since she had known him, he looked uncertain. I notice you. No, you don't. Sophia's voice cracked. You notice when your documents are translated incorrectly. You notice when I'm late. You notice when I forget to staple the pages together. But you don't notice me. That's not true. When's my birthday, Mr. Rinaldi? He didn't answer. What's my favorite color? What kind of coffee do I drink? Do I have siblings? Where did I grow up? She fired the questions at him, watching his expression remain blank. You don't know anything about me because you've never asked. Because I'm invisible to you. I have been for 2 years. You're not. I am, and that's fine. That's what you pay me for, really. To be competent and forgettable. To show up, do my work, and disappear. Sophia moved toward the door, hand on the knob. But that photo? That was for me. Not for you. Not for anyone else. Just for me. One picture where I look like someone who matters. Someone who exists outside of your office. And I'm not deleting it because you decided tonight that you suddenly care what I do. She opened the door. An invitation for him to leave. An end to whatever this confrontation was. Anthony didn't move. He stood in the center of her small living room, expensive and out of place among her secondhand furniture and fading curtains. His hands curled into fists at his sides, then relaxed. His breathing was controlled but heavier than normal. Close the door, he said quietly. Mr. Rinaldi, Anthony. He took a step toward her. If we're going to have this conversation, use my name. We're not having any conversation. You're leaving. November 7th. Sophia blinked. What? Your birthday. November 7th. You'll be 28. He took another step closer. You drink tea, not coffee. Earl Grey with too much sugar. You have a younger brother named Ryan who's studying engineering in Ohio. You grew up in a small town outside Cleveland. Your favorite color is teal, but you never wear it because you think it makes you look unprofessional. The air left Sophia's lungs. She stood frozen, hand still on the doorknob, staring at him. You translate faster when you're anxious, Anthony continued. His voice was softer now, almost gentle. You bite your bottom lip when you're concentrating. You always arrive exactly 15 minutes early because you're terrified of being late. You organize the documents by date even though I never asked you to. And every single Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday for 2 years, you've walked into my office wearing clothes that hide everything interesting about you because you think that's what I want. How do you... I notice everything about you, Sophia. Every detail. Every day. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes, the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. I notice you so much that it's become a problem. Her hand fell from the doorknob. Then why did you never say anything? Because noticing you was one thing. Acting on it was something else entirely. His gaze dropped to the burgundy dress again, then back up. And then tonight, I saw that photo. Saw you looking like that, smiling like that, and all I could think was that some other man was going to see it too. Some man who doesn't know that you hate the smell of lilies, or that you read romance novels on the subway, or that you're afraid of heights but pretend you're not. You don't have any right to be jealous, Sophia whispered. I know. You never gave me any indication that you... I know that too. They stood there. The tension so thick Sophia could barely breathe through it. She should tell him to leave. Should close the door literally and figuratively on whatever this was. Should protect herself from the inevitable disappointment. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Why did you tell me to delete the photo?" Anthony's expression shifted. The control cracked just slightly, letting something darker and more honest show through. Because I didn't want anyone else seeing you like that. Didn't want them thinking you were... He stopped, jaw clenching. That photo was supposed to be for someone, and I couldn't stand the idea that it wasn't for me. Sophia's pulse thundered in her ears. Anthony Rinaldi stood in her cramped apartment, having just admitted he didn't want anyone else seeing her photo. The confession hung between them like smoke, thick and impossible to ignore. It wasn't for anyone, she said finally. Her voice came out rough, unsteady. It was goodbye. His eyes narrowed. Goodbye to what? To you. To this. She gestured vaguely between them. To 2 years of translating documents and pretending I don't feel anything. Sophia. No. You don't get to do this. The anger that had been simmering for months suddenly boiled over. You don't get to show up here acting like you have some claim on me when you've spent 2 years treating me like I'm part of the furniture. You want to know why I posted that photo? Because I needed proof that I existed as something other than your translator. Because next week I'm leaving, and I wanted one picture where I looked like a woman someone might actually want, instead of the invisible employee you see every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Anthony went very still. What do you mean, leaving? Sophia pushed past him, suddenly needing distance. She walked to the small kitchen table where her laptop sat open, pulled out the printed email confirmation from underneath it, and held it up. I accepted a job in Boston. Translation agency, full-time position, benefits. I start a week from Monday. He stared at the paper like it was a weapon pointed at his chest. When were you going to tell me? I wrote a resignation letter. It's in my bag. I was going to give it to you on Tuesday. She set the confirmation down, crossed her arms. You would have found a replacement in a few days. Someone just as competent who doesn't make things complicated. Complicated. He repeated the word slowly, testing it. Is that what you think this is? I don't know what this is. 5 minutes ago, you were just my employer. Now you're standing in my apartment saying you notice everything about me, that you're jealous of a photo on Instagram. So yes, Anthony, it's complicated. He flinched slightly at the use of his first name. Sophia had never said it out loud before. It felt strange on her tongue, intimate in a way that made her chest tight. Show me the tickets, he said abruptly. What? You said you have bus tickets to Boston. Show me. Sophia hesitated, then retrieved her purse from the counter. The tickets were tucked into the side pocket, already printed, already paid for. She handed them over without a word. Anthony examined them carefully. His jaw clenched as he read the date, the time, the seat assignment. 6 days from now. Yes. And you've already packed? Half my suitcase is done. Most of my stuff will fit in 2 bags. She watched his face, trying to read the emotions flickering across it. I don't have much. He looked up from the tickets. Why didn't you tell me you were unhappy? Because you weren't supposed to care. The admission came out softer than she intended. I'm your employee. My personal feelings aren't your concern. They are, if they make you leave. I'm leaving because staying is killing me. The words burst out before Sophia could stop them. Do you have any idea what it's like to be in love with someone who looks right through you? To spend hours in your office 3 days a week, knowing that you're thinking about business deals and territory disputes, and God knows what else while I'm sitting there trying not to stare at you like an idiot. Anthony's expression shifted. Something raw and unguarded flickered in his eyes. You're in love with me. Don't. Sophia turned away, heat flooding her face. Don't make me say it again. I already feel pathetic. Look at me. No. Sophia. His voice dropped lower, gentle but insistent. Look at me. She forced herself to turn back around. He had moved closer without her noticing, now standing just a few feet away. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. You think I look through you, he said quietly. You think I don't notice. But I know that you organize my documents by date even though the system makes no difference to me because it makes you feel more in control. I know you take the stairs instead of the elevator when you come to the mansion because you're afraid of small spaces, but too proud to admit it. I know you wear the same silver bracelet every single day because it was your mother's, and you touch it whenever you're nervous. Sophia's hand instinctively went to her wrist, to the thin chain she never removed. How do you... I told you. I notice everything. He took another step closer. I notice when you bite your lip because you're trying not to correct my terrible Italian pronunciation. I notice when you stay late finishing translations because you refuse to leave work incomplete. I notice that you never ask for advances on your payment, even when I can see you're struggling financially. I notice you, Sophia, every damn day for 2 years. Then why? Her voice cracked. Why did you never say anything? Why did you treat me like I was just another employee? Anthony's expression darkened. Because I was trying to protect you. From what? From me. From my life. From everything that comes with being close to someone like me. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting the perfect styling for the first time since she'd known him. You think you know what I do. But you don't. You translate documents about shipping manifests and property acquisitions. You don't see the meetings that happen after you leave. You don't know about the men who would hurt you just to get leverage over me. You're in the Mafia. Sophia said it flatly, without judgment. She had suspected for months but never asked. I'm not stupid. I know what some of those documents really mean. Knowing and understanding are different things. Anthony's voice took on an edge. The O'Sullivan family has been watching my movements for the last 6 months. They're Irish, territorial, and they don't like that I've been expanding into areas they consider theirs. They look for weaknesses. They look for people I care about. But you don't care about me. Not officially. I'm just your translator. You think that matters? His laugh was sharp, bitter. They photograph everyone who enters my property regularly. They track patterns. They already know your name, where you live, where you work. If they wanted to use you against me, they could. The only thing keeping you safe is that they think you're insignificant. The words stung more than Sophia expected, so staying invisible keeps me alive. Is that it? That was the idea. Was? Anthony's jaw clenched. I saw your photo tonight, saw you looking like that, dressed like you were going somewhere, living your life. And all I could think was that you were moving forward without me. That in a week, you'd be in Boston starting over, and I'd be here knowing I let you go because it was safer. It is safer, Sophia whispered. I don't care anymore. The admission hung between them. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. She wanted to close the distance, to touch him, to do something with the tension crackling in the air. But fear held her frozen. You should care, she said. If what you're saying is true, if being close to you puts me in danger, then this, she gestured helplessly between them. This is a terrible idea, probably the worst one I've ever had. Anthony moved closer still, close enough that Sophia could feel the heat radiating off him. But seeing that photo broke something in me. Knowing you were leaving broke something else. I spent 2 years being rational, keeping my distance, doing the right thing. And it didn't matter. You're still leaving. You still fell in love with me. The O'Sullivans still know who you are. All I did was waste 2 years I could have spent actually being with you. Sophia's breath came faster. You can't just decide now that you want me. You can't show up here and expect... I'm not expecting anything. He stopped just inches away. I'm asking. Stay in New York. Let me protect you properly. Not from a distance. Let me... He stopped. Seemed to struggle with the words. Let me try to be what you need. What about what you need? Sophia forced herself to hold his gaze. You said it yourself. People close to you become targets. Are you really willing to risk that? Or is this just jealousy talking? Because in a few days, you'll remember why you kept your distance. And I'll be right back to being invisible, except this time it'll hurt more, because I'll know you almost wanted me. Something flickered across Anthony's face. Pain, maybe. Or regret. You think this is just jealousy. I don't know what else it could be. You went 2 years without... I went 2 years fighting this. His voice dropped to something raw and honest. Every time you walked into my office, I had to remind myself why touching you was a bad idea. Why asking about your day would lead to caring more than I should. Why offering you more money or better working conditions would make you a more obvious target. I built walls between us because the alternative was pulling you into my world and watching something happen to you. But now you're leaving anyway. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingertips grazed her cheek. Now I'm realizing that protecting you by staying away didn't actually protect you. It just meant I missed 2 years of this. Sophia's skin burned where he'd touched her. She should step back. Should maintain the professional distance they'd kept for so long. Should remember that this man was dangerous in ways that went beyond the obvious attraction pulling her toward him. Instead, she found herself asking, 2 years of what? Knowing what your hair feels like. Whether you'd lean into my touch or pull away. His hand moved to cup her jaw, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Whether that photo on Instagram was even close to how beautiful you look in person. Anthony, I know this is selfish. I know asking you to stay is the opposite of keeping you safe. But I can't, his voice caught. I can't watch you walk away knowing I never even tried. They stood frozen in that moment, his hand on her face. Their breathing synchronized. Sophia could feel her resolve crumbling. 2 years of loving him from a careful distance. And now he was here. Touching her, saying things she'd imagined 1,000 times but never believed would be real. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. "Yes. You're going to hurt me. I'll try not to. That's not a promise." "No," Anthony agreed. "It's not, but it's honest." Sophia closed her eyes, felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Boston meant safety. A fresh start. A life without complications. Staying meant danger she couldn't fully understand. A relationship that might not survive the world he lived in. And the very real possibility of getting her heart shattered. But it also meant having him. Actually having him, instead of just wanting him from across a desk. She opened her eyes. Anthony was watching her with an intensity that stole her breath. Waiting, not pushing. Giving her the choice he'd taken away by keeping his distance for 2 years. "The tickets are non-refundable," she said finally. His expression didn't change. "I'll buy you new ones, whenever you want to leave. The job offer is good. Stable salary, benefits. I'll match it. Double it if that's what it takes." "That's not..." Sophia stopped, shook her head. "You can't just throw money at this and make it okay. Then tell me what would make it okay." His thumb traced her jawline. "Tell me what you need. I need you to mean it." The words came out barely above a whisper. "I need this to be more than just jealousy over a photo. More than wanting something you can't have. Because if I stay, if I let myself believe this is real, and then you wake up next week and remember all the reasons you kept your distance." Her voice broke. "I won't survive that." Anthony's free hand came up to frame her other cheek, holding her face gently between his palms. "I've wanted you since the 3rd time you walked into my office. You were wearing a gray sweater, and you corrected a translator error that would have cost me $50,000. You didn't even realize you'd saved me money. You just wanted the work to be perfect." Sophia's heart stuttered. "That was 2 years ago. I know. You never said anything. I'm saying it now." He leaned closer, forehead nearly touching hers. "I'm saying I notice you. I want you. And if you stay, I'll spend every day proving that this isn't about jealousy or control or any of the other things you think it might be. What if the O'Sullivans? Then I'll handle them. But you don't get to use them as an excuse to run." His voice gentled. "If you want to go to Boston because you don't feel the same way anymore, because I waited too long and you're done, I'll understand. But if you're running because you're scared of getting hurt, you should know..." He paused. "You should know that watching you leave will hurt worse than anything the O'Sullivans could do to me." The confession broke something loose in Sophia's chest. She pulled back just enough to see his face clearly. "You're serious about this?" "Yes. Even though it's dangerous. Even though I'm..." "Don't." Anthony's grip on her face tightened slightly. "Don't finish that sentence by putting yourself down. You're brilliant and brave and too good for this life, but I'm too selfish to let that stop me from asking you to stay." Sophia's hands came up to rest against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat under her palms, rapid and unsteady. He was as affected as she was. The control he always showed was cracking, and underneath it was just a man who wanted something he thought he couldn't have. "I need time," she said. "To think, to figure out if this is..." "Take whatever time you need." He didn't move away. "But know that I'm not changing my mind. Not about this." They stood there, caught in the space between what had been and what might be. Sophia's apartment had never felt smaller or more significant. This was the moment everything changed. The pivot point she'd dreamed about and feared in equal measure. Finally, reluctantly, Anthony stepped back. His hands dropped from her face. "I should go." "Let you think." Sophia nodded, not trusting her voice. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. "For what it's worth, that photo, you looked incredible. But you look better now, angry at me, finally telling me the truth." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, and Sophia was alone with her half-packed suitcase, her non-refundable bus tickets, and the impossible choice between safety and everything she'd ever wanted. 3 days passed before Sophia returned to the Rinaldi mansion. 3 days of turning the conversation over in her mind, analyzing every word, every touch, every promise Anthony had made in her cramped apartment. She hadn't slept well. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt his hands on her face, heard his voice saying he'd wanted her for 2 years. The resignation letter sat in her bag, professionally typed and formally worded. She had rewritten it twice, trying to find language that didn't reveal too much about why she was leaving. In the end, she'd settled on simple phrases about new opportunities and personal growth. Nothing about love or fear or the impossible situation she'd found herself in. The morning was crisp and cold as she climbed the steps to the mansion's entrance. Her hands trembled slightly as she rang the bell. This wasn't her usual Tuesday visit. She had called ahead, asked if she could come by to discuss something important. The housekeeper who answered had sounded surprised but agreed immediately. The heavy door swung open. A woman Sophia recognized but had never formally met stood there. Mid-50s, kind eyes, dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple black dress and sensible shoes. "Miss Grant," the woman said warmly. "Please, come in. I'm Lucia. We've never been properly introduced, but I've seen you here many times." Sophia stepped into the familiar foyer, but today it felt different. Everything looked the same. The marble floors, the expensive artwork on the walls, the curved staircase leading to the second floor. But her perception had shifted. This wasn't just her employer's house anymore. It was the home of a man who claimed to have been watching her for 2 years. "Mr. Rinaldi is expecting you," Lucia continued, leading her deeper into the house. "He asked that you meet him in his private office." That was new. Sophia had always worked in the formal study off the main hallway, a room clearly designed for business meetings with its long table and uncomfortable chairs. She had never ventured further into Anthony's personal space. They climbed the staircase, turned down a hallway Sophia had never seen before. The decor became less formal here. Framed photographs on the walls, a reading nook with worn leather chairs, signs that someone actually lived in this massive house. Lucia stopped at a heavy wooden door. "Go right in. He's waiting." Sophia knocked anyway. Old habits. "Come in," Anthony's voice, muffled by the door. She pushed it open and stepped into a room that was undeniably his. Dark wood furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with volumes in multiple languages, a desk that looked antique and expensive. Windows overlooked the manicured gardens behind the house. The morning light streamed in, making the space feel warmer than the rest of the mansion. Anthony stood behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear. He held up one finger. "Wait a moment," and continued speaking in rapid Italian. Something about shipments and timing, and people whose names Sophia didn't recognize. She took the opportunity to study him. He wore black pants and a charcoal dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. No tie. His hair was slightly less perfect than usual, like he'd been running his hands through it. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't been sleeping well either. He ended the call, set the phone down, and looked at her properly. His expression was guarded, giving nothing away. "You came. I said I would." Sophia pulled the resignation letter from her bag, held it up. "I brought this. It's official now." Anthony's jaw tightened, but he didn't reach for the letter. "Before you give me that, I need to show you something. Anthony, please." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. 5 minutes. Then you can hand me that letter and walk away if you still want to." Sophia hesitated, then sat. The leather chair was comfortable, clearly used regularly. She wondered how many business deals had been negotiated from this exact spot. Anthony opened a drawer, pulled out a manila folder, and placed it on the desk between them. He didn't open it immediately. Instead, he watched her face carefully. "What I'm about to show you will change how you see this situation," he said quietly. "Once you know, you can't unknow it. Are you sure you want to see? You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to be honest." He pushed the folder toward her. "Open it." Sophia's hands shook slightly as she picked up the folder. Inside were photographs. Surveillance photos, clearly taken with a telephoto lens from a distance. The first one showed the front of the Rinaldi mansion. The second showed her walking down the front steps, translation bag over her shoulder, wearing the gray sweater she'd worn last Tuesday. Her stomach dropped. "When was this taken?" "Last week. Keep looking." The next photo showed her at the subway station 3 blocks from her apartment, then one of her entering the bar where she worked Thursday nights. Another of her buying coffee at the shop on her corner. Every image was stamped with a date and time in the bottom corner. Who took these? Sophia's voice came out thin. Michael O'Sullivan's people. He runs the Irish operations in 3 boroughs. We've been having territorial disputes for the last 6 months. Anthony pulled out another set of photos, these ones showing different angles of Sophia's building. Her walking to work, her meeting her friend Ashley for lunch 2 weeks ago. They've been tracking everyone who comes to this house regularly, building profiles, looking for leverage. Sophia's hands trembled as she sorted through the images. There were at least 20 photos of her. Different days, different locations, always alone and unaware she was being watched. Why? She managed. Because they want to know who matters to me, who they could use to pressure me into giving up territory or accepting unfavorable terms. Anthony leaned forward, his expression intense. You thought being invisible kept you safe. But Sophia, they've known about you for months. They know where you live, where you work, what your patterns are. Going to Boston doesn't change that. It just means you'd be alone and unprotected when they decided to make a move. But I'm nobody. The protest came out weak. I'm just your translator. Do you think they care? They see you here 3 times a week, consistently, for 2 years. That's enough to make you interesting. He pulled out another document. This one printed communications, emails and text messages. These were intercepted from one of O'Sullivan's lieutenants. Read the highlighted sections. Sophia's eyes scanned the page. Phrases jumped out at her. Rinaldi's translator. Comes every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Vulnerable access point. Recommend escalation within 2 weeks. The room tilted slightly. Sophia gripped the edge of the desk, forcing herself to breathe steadily. They're planning something. Yes. Involving me. Yes. She looked up at him. His expression was grim, but not surprised. He had known about this, had been carrying this knowledge while she'd been debating whether to stay or go, completely unaware that the choice might not be hers to make. How long have you known? She asked. 3 weeks. That's when my security team intercepted the communications. Anthony ran a hand through his hair, disrupting it further. I've been trying to figure out how to handle it without involving you directly. But then you posted that photo and I realized I was out of time. So that's why you came to my apartment. Not because you were jealous. Because you wanted to warn me. Both things can be true. He held her gaze. I was jealous. Seeing you dressed like that, knowing you were moving forward with your life, it made me insane. But I also needed you to understand that leaving doesn't solve this problem. It might actually make it worse. Sophia set the photos down carefully. Her mind raced through possibilities, consequences, the rapidly shrinking list of safe options. What do they want? Money? Information? Leverage. If they take you, they can force me to make concessions. Give up territories. Renegotiate agreements. Maybe even step down from certain operations. Anthony's voice was steady, almost clinical, but his hands had curled into fists on the desk. They won't kill you. You're more valuable alive. But they would hurt you, scare you, use you to break me. The casual way he said it made everything feel surreal. Sophia had known abstractly that Anthony was involved in dangerous business. She had translated enough documents to understand that his operations existed in legal gray areas at best. But hearing him talk about kidnapping and leverage and hurting her as tactical moves in some larger game made it horrifyingly real. I called the agency in Boston this morning, she said suddenly. Before I came here, I told them I couldn't accept the position. Anthony's expression shifted. Why? Because you were right. Running away doesn't solve anything. And because... She stopped, gathered her courage. Because I spent 3 days trying to convince myself I could walk away from you, and I couldn't. I've been in love with you for too long to suddenly stop just because it's complicated. Something in his face softened. You turned down the job. I turned down the job, she confirmed. Before I saw any of this, before I knew about the O'Sullivans or the photos or the threat, I made that choice because I wanted to stay, not because I felt trapped. Sophia, but now I need to know what staying actually means. She gestured at the photos spread across his desk. You said I'm in danger. How do we fix that? Anthony stood, walked around the desk until he was standing directly in front of her. I can protect you. Real protection. Not the distant kind where I pretend you don't matter. But it means changes. Security following you. Living somewhere more secure. Potentially living here until we resolve the O'Sullivan situation. Here? In your house? In the guest wing. Separate entrance, separate living space. You'd have privacy but also protection. Round-the-clock security, controlled access, everything monitored. He crouched down so they were at eye level. I know it sounds extreme, but these people don't make idle threats. That communication said within 2 weeks. We're already 3 days into that window. Sophia's breath came faster. This was more than complicated. This was her entire life changing overnight. For how long? Until we neutralize the threat. I'm working on a meeting with O'Sullivan, trying to reach a territorial agreement that makes this unnecessary. But until that happens, I need to know you're safe. And what am I to you while I'm living here? The question came out sharper than she intended. Am I still just your translator? Your employee who happens to need protection? Or are we... She couldn't finish the sentence. Anthony reached up, cupped her face the same way he had in her apartment. You're the woman I've been in love with for 2 years. The woman I was too afraid to claim because claiming you meant putting you at risk. But you're at risk anyway now. So I'm asking, let me protect you properly. Let me be with you the way I should have been from the start. Before Sophia could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Anthony pulled back, frustration flashing across his face. Come in. The door opened to reveal a man Sophia had seen before. Tall, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped hair, and the alert posture of someone trained for security work. Anthony's driver, though she suspected that was only part of his actual job. Boss? The man said. Sorry to interrupt. You said to let you know if anything developed with the surveillance situation. Daniel. Anthony stood, helped Sophia to her feet. This is Sophia Grant. Sophia. Daniel heads my security team. Daniel nodded respectfully at her. Miss Grant, I want you to know that what Mr. Rinaldi is telling you is accurate. We've confirmed that your image has been circulated among O'Sullivan's people. At least 3 of his men have been seen in your neighborhood in the last week. The confirmation from a third party made Sophia's knees weak. This wasn't just Anthony trying to manipulate her into staying. This was real threat, real danger, real people watching her life. 3 men, she repeated numbly. We've identified 2 of them. Low-level enforcers, nothing sophisticated. But their presence means O'Sullivan is serious about this. Daniel's expression was sympathetic, but professional. Mr. Rinaldi's offer of protection is the best option you have right now. Sophia looked between them. Anthony with his intense gaze and barely controlled emotion. Daniel with his matter-of-fact assessment of her danger. Everything she had built, every careful boundary she had maintained was crumbling. If I stay, she said slowly, if I accept this protection and move into the guest wing, I need something from you. Anything, Anthony said immediately. Honesty, complete honesty. No more pretending you don't care to keep me safe. No more distance for my own good. If we're doing this, if I'm trusting you with my life, I need to know exactly where I stand with you, not what's convenient or strategic. The truth. Anthony took her hands, held them firmly. The truth is, I should have done this 2 years ago. The truth is, I'm terrified of what might happen to you because of me. The truth is, I'm also too selfish to let you walk away now that I finally have the chance to be with you. And the truth is, he paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. The truth is, I love you. I'm in love with you. And if you let me, I'll spend every day proving that this isn't about control or convenience. It's about not losing the best thing that's ever walked into my life. Sophia's eyes burned. She squeezed his hands, anchored herself to the solid warmth of him. Okay, I'll stay. I'll accept the protection. I'll move into the guest wing. She managed a shaky smile. I'll let you prove you mean all of this. The tension in Anthony's shoulders released. He pulled her closer, pressed his forehead against hers. Thank you. Daniel cleared his throat politely. I'll coordinate moving Miss Grant's belongings. We should do it today, before anyone notices the change in pattern. Do it, Anthony said without looking away from Sophia. Whatever she needs, make it happen. As Daniel left, closing the door behind him, Sophia allowed herself to sink into Anthony's embrace. Her resignation letter still sat on the desk, unread, and now unnecessary. The photos of her surveillance spread across the surface like evidence of how thoroughly her life had already been invaded. This wasn't the choice she had imagined making, but standing there in Anthony's arms, feeling safer than she had in days despite the danger surrounding them, Sophia realized something important. Sometimes love meant choosing the complicated path. Sometimes it meant walking toward the danger instead of away from it. And sometimes being seen, really, truly seen, was worth the risk. Sophia's belongings arrived at the Rinaldi mansion in 2 modest suitcases and 3 cardboard boxes. Everything she owned fit into Daniel's SUV with room to spare. Watching her entire life loaded into a vehicle that probably cost more than a year of her rent made her feel small and slightly embarrassed, though no one commented on it. The guest suite was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked gardens that were still green despite the late autumn chill. The bedroom had a king-sized bed with expensive linens. The bathroom was all marble and gold fixtures, and there was even a small sitting area with a couch and reading lamp. A separate entrance led to a private hallway, giving her the independence Anthony had promised. Lucia appeared in the doorway as Sophia was unpacking her second suitcase. The housekeeper carried fresh towels and wore the same warm expression from earlier. "I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed," Lucia said, setting the towels on the bathroom counter. "If there's anything missing, just let me know. I've been managing this house for 15 years. Nothing surprises me anymore." Sophia smiled despite her nerves. "It's beautiful. More than I expected. Mr. Rinaldi was very specific about which room you should have. He wanted you to have the best view." Lucia paused, then added more quietly, "It's good to see him with someone who humanizes him. He's been alone too long, carrying too much weight by himself." The observation caught Sophia off guard. "You've known him a long time?" "Since he was 19 and suddenly responsible for everything his father left behind. I watched him grow into the man he is now. Watched him build walls to protect himself." Lucia's expression softened. "You're the first person I've seen him let close in years. That means something." Before Sophia could respond, Lucia excused herself with instructions to come down for dinner at 7. Sophia finished unpacking in a daze, hanging her modest wardrobe in a closet designed for someone with far more clothing. Her romance novels looked out of place on the expensive bookshelves. Her worn laptop sat awkwardly on the elegant desk. Her phone buzzed on the edge of the desk, the screen flashing a name that made her stomach twist. Ashley. She'd ignored her for too long. Missed calls, frantic messages. That familiar, stubborn persistence that had once felt comforting and now felt dangerous. Ashley didn't know about Anthony. She didn't know about surveillance photos or men with quiet eyes who memorized routines. She only knew Sophia had promised Boston, promised a fresh start, and then disappeared. Sophia picked up the phone and forced her hands to steady. Ordinary words. Safe words. "Ash, I'm okay. The Boston job changed at the last minute. I took a short-term private contract, and I'm staying on site for a while. It's secure, and I'm not supposed to have my phone on much. Please don't worry. I'll call you as soon as I can. I promise." She hit send and immediately hated how thin it sounded, but thin was better than true. A reply came almost at once. "You scared the hell out of me. Call me. Tonight." Sophia's throat tightened. Tonight was impossible. But she could give Ashley something that wasn't a lie. "Soon," she typed, and then added, "I love you. I'm sorry." This wasn't her world, but it was the world she'd chosen. The first 2 days passed in strange limbo. Sophia woke in luxury she wasn't accustomed to, wandered the parts of the house she was allowed to access, and tried not to feel like an imposter. Anthony was polite but distant, clearly giving her space to adjust. They spoke briefly at breakfast, exchanged pleasantries when they passed in hallways, but the intensity from his office had been carefully packed away. It made Sophia want to scream. She hadn't moved here for politeness. She'd moved here because he'd claimed to love her, because he'd promised honesty, because she was tired of dancing around what they both wanted. On the third evening, Anthony found her in the library. She'd discovered the room that afternoon. Walls of books in multiple languages, comfortable chairs, a fireplace that someone had already lit against the cold. She was curled up reading when he knocked on the doorframe. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. Sophia looked up from her book. He'd changed from his usual dress shirt into something more casual, dark jeans and a fitted sweater that emphasized his build. His hair was slightly disheveled, and he looked more relaxed than she'd seen him since she'd moved in. "It's your house," she said. "It's your space now, too." He settled into the chair across from hers, maintaining careful distance. "What are you reading?" She held up the paperback romance novel, slightly embarrassed. "Escapism. You mentioned wanting to write romance." It wasn't a question, but his tone invited elaboration. "Someday, when I'm brave enough to try." Sophia set the book aside. "This is nice, but it feels strange. You're being very careful around me. I'm trying not to overwhelm you. I moved into your house to be protected from people who want to kidnap me. I think we're past the point of overwhelming." She met his eyes directly. "You promised honesty. That includes not pretending we're just polite acquaintances sharing a house." Anthony's expression shifted. Some of the careful control fell away. "You're right. I don't know how to do this. How to be with you without treating you like something that might break. Try talking to me like a person you actually know. Not your employee, not someone you're protecting. Just me." He was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he said, "Tell me about your parents. You mentioned they died when you were 19, but I don't know the story." The question surprised her. It wasn't what she'd expected. "Car accident. Black ice on the highway outside Cleveland. My dad died on impact. My mom lasted 3 days in the hospital." Sophia's voice remained steady. She'd told this story before, had learned to deliver it without falling apart. "I was in my second year of college. My brother Ryan was 16. We became each other's family after that. That's why you work so hard. Supporting him through school. He has scholarships, but they don't cover everything. And I wanted to make sure he didn't have to worry about money the way I did." She tucked her legs under her. "Your turn. Tell me something real about you." Anthony leaned back in his chair. "My father built this empire from nothing. Worked his way up through the organization, made strategic moves, eliminated competition. By the time I was 15, he controlled half of New York. And then he had a heart attack at 53 and died in his office, leaving me to figure out how to hold everything together." 19, Sophia said, remembering what Lucia had mentioned. "You were so young, old enough to understand what failure would mean. Everyone was watching, waiting to see if the boss's son could actually lead, or if I'd crumble under the pressure." He ran a hand through his hair. "I had to become someone harder, more ruthless. Someone people feared enough to follow without question. But that's not who you are, not completely. No, but it's who I had to be to survive." He looked at her with something raw in his expression. "My sister Valentina was 12 when our father died. I made sure she got out, sent her to boarding school in Switzerland, then university in Europe. She's studying medicine now in Vienna. We video call every week, and she has no idea about most of what I actually do." Sophia absorbed this. "You protected her by keeping her distant. Same strategy I tried with you. Worked better with her because she was young enough not to question it." His mouth twisted wryly. "She thinks I'm a legitimate businessman who happens to be paranoid about security. Does she know about me? Not yet. But I want her to. He stopped, seemed to be choosing words carefully. "I want to introduce you properly, when things are safer. When I can bring her back for a visit without worrying about her becoming another target." The vulnerability in his admission made Sophia's chest tighten. She stood, crossed the space between them, and sat on the arm of his chair. Close, but not quite touching. "Tell me something else. Something you've never told anyone." Anthony looked up at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "I used to watch you translate. You'd get this little crease between your eyebrows when you were concentrating, and you'd bite your bottom lip when you found a tricky phrase. I'd start meetings late, just to have an excuse to stay in the room with you longer. That's how you knew all those details. About the tea and the bracelet and everything else. I memorized you. Every detail. It was the only way I could have you." His hand came up tentatively, rested on her knee. "This is better. Actually having you here. Actually being allowed to touch you." Sophia covered his hand with hers. We should have dinner together. Not separately in different parts of the house. Together. I didn't want to assume. I'm assuming. For both of us. She squeezed his hand. Tomorrow night I want to cook. Something normal. No staff. No formal dining room. Just us in the kitchen making dinner like regular people. Anthony's expression softened. You want to cook in my kitchen. I want to do something that doesn't feel like I'm a guest in a fortress. I want to feel like I actually live here, not like I'm hiding in a very expensive safe house. Okay. He stood, and suddenly they were very close. His hand still on her knee, her fingers still wrapped around his. Tomorrow night. The kitchen is yours. They stood like that for a long moment, neither moving, both aware of how easy it would be to close the remaining distance. But Anthony pulled back first, put space between them with visible effort. Slow, he said, more to himself than to her. I promised myself I'd do this right. Sophia wanted to argue that slow was the last thing she needed after 2 years of waiting. But she appreciated the restraint, even as it frustrated her. Tomorrow, then. The next evening, Sophia commandeered the kitchen with Lucia's amused permission. She'd found pasta and fresh vegetables, ingredients for a simple carbonara that her mother had taught her to make years ago. Nothing fancy, just comfort food that reminded her of home. Anthony appeared at 6, rolling up his sleeves and asking what he could do to help. The domesticity of it felt surreal. The dangerous man who ran criminal operations chopping vegetables beside her while she boiled water for pasta. Your technique is terrible, Sophia commented, watching him massacre a bell pepper. Have you ever actually cooked before? I can make coffee and toast. That's about the extent of it. He looked at his uneven pepper slices. This is harder than it looks. Here. Sophia moved beside him, put her hand over his on the knife handle. Steady pressure, let the blade do the work. Don't force it. She guided his hand through a few cuts, aware of how close they were standing, how his warmth radiated against her side. When the pepper was reasonably chopped, she stepped back, suddenly self-conscious. Better, she said, her voice coming out slightly breathless. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, Sophia stirring pasta while Anthony finished the vegetables with significantly improved technique. The kitchen filled with the smell of cooking food and something else. Possibility, maybe. Or the beginning of something that felt normal, despite everything else happening around them. I talked to Ryan yesterday, Sophia said while draining the pasta. I told him I moved. How did he take it? He was suspicious. Asked a lot of questions about why I suddenly needed to live somewhere more secure. She mixed the pasta with the sauce, added the vegetables Anthony had prepared. I couldn't exactly tell him the truth. That my employer is in the Mafia and his rivals want to kidnap me. So I said I was house-sitting for a friend who travels a lot. Does he know about me? About how you feel? Sophia plated the food, buying time before answering. He knows I was in love with someone who didn't seem to notice me. I talked about it once when I'd had too much wine on a video call. He told me to quit my job and find someone who appreciated me. Smart brother. He also said that anyone who couldn't see how amazing I was didn't deserve me. She handed Anthony his plate. His exact words. They sat at the kitchen island, rather than the formal dining room. The space felt intimate, informal, like they were actually two people getting to know each other, rather than employer and employee navigating a complicated situation. This is really good, Anthony said after the first bite. Where did you learn to cook like this? My mom. She grew up in an Italian neighborhood in Cleveland, learned from her grandmother. I used to help her every Sunday. Sophia twirled pasta around her fork. It's one of the few things I have left of her. The recipes, the techniques, muscle memory from being in the kitchen together. My mother cooked too. Traditional Italian dishes that my father loved. She'd spend all day preparing meals for his business associates. Anthony's expression went distant. She died when I was 8. Cancer. After that, we had staff to handle meals. My father never wanted to eat in the kitchen anymore. Said it reminded him of her too much. Sophia set down her fork, reached across to touch his hand. I'm sorry. That's young to lose a parent. Young to lose both of them. His fingers curled around hers. We both know what that's like. Building a life from the pieces left behind. They finished eating, talking about lighter things. books they'd both read, places they wanted to travel, the terrible action movie Sophia had watched in her suite the night before. It felt normal in a way that nothing had felt since the night Anthony appeared at her apartment door. When they were done, Sophia started washing dishes despite Anthony's protest that staff would handle it. "I need to do something normal," she insisted. "Let me wash dishes like a regular person." He joined her at the sink, drying plates as she handed them over. They worked side by side, shoulders occasionally brushing, creating a rhythm that felt practiced despite being new. Sophia reached for a knife at the same moment Anthony did. Their hands collided, fingers tangling. They both froze. The moment stretched. Sophia looked up at Anthony, found him staring down at her with an intensity that made her heart stutter. His hand turned over under hers, palm pressing against palm. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "Sophia," he said quietly. Just her name, but it sounded like a question and a prayer all at once. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the warmth of his hand against hers, the proximity of his body, the way he was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Anthony's free hand came up to her waist, pulled her gently toward him. She went willingly, heart hammering, aware they were crossing a line they'd been dancing around for days. His forehead lowered to rest against hers. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. "I don't want you to stop." He kissed her. Finally, after 2 years of distance and 3 days of careful restraint, Anthony kissed her. It was slow at first, testing, giving her space to pull away. But when she leaned into him, when her hands came up to grip his shirt, the kiss deepened. Sophia had imagined this moment countless times. None of her fantasies compared to the reality. His mouth on hers, his hands pulling her closer, the way he kissed her like she was precious and necessary and his. They broke apart breathing hard, foreheads still pressed together. Anthony's hands framed her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbones. "I've wanted to do that for so long," he said roughly. Before Sophia could respond, a sharp knock sounded at the kitchen door. They sprang apart as Lucia entered, professional mask in place, though her eyes sparkled with knowing amusement. "I'm very sorry to interrupt," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "But Daniel is here. He says it's urgent and needs to speak with Mr. Rinaldi immediately." The warmth drained from Anthony's expression, replaced by cold focus. "Where is he?" "Your office. He said it's about the situation you've been monitoring." Anthony's jaw clenched. He looked at Sophia, frustration and regret warring in his eyes. "I need to go," Sophia said, trying to sound steadier than she felt. "It's fine." He hesitated, then kissed her forehead quickly. "We'll finish this conversation later." Then he was gone, striding out of the kitchen with the purposeful gait of someone heading into battle. Lucia gave Sophia a sympathetic look before following him out, leaving Sophia alone with dirty dishes and the lingering warmth of a kiss that had been 2 years in the making. She could hear raised voices from the direction of Anthony's office. Not the words, just the tone. Urgent, angry, tense. Whatever Daniel had discovered, it wasn't good news. Sophia dried the remaining dishes mechanically, her mind racing. One perfect moment of normalcy, and reality had crashed back in. This was her life now. Stolen kisses in kitchens interrupted by security threats. Romance complicated by danger. A relationship built in the spaces between crisis management. She finished cleaning up, turned off the lights, and headed back to her suite. Anthony never came back to finish their dinner. The kitchen stayed empty, and whatever Daniel had told him kept him occupied for the rest of the night. Lying in bed later, Sophia touched her lips, remembering the kiss. Remembering the way Anthony had looked at her like she was everything. Whatever came next, whatever threat Daniel had reported, at least she had that moment. At least now she knew what it felt like to actually be wanted by him. The question was whether they'd get enough moments like that to make everything else worthwhile. Sophia woke with her heart pounding and no idea why. For a second she thought it was a nightmare, the kind that evaporated as soon as she opened her eyes. Then she realized she was already sitting halfway up in bed, fingers fisted in the sheets, breath coming in short, sharp pulls that scraped her throat. The room was dark. Too dark. The heavy curtains blocked out most of the city glow, turning the guest suite into a box of shadows. The only light came from the digital clock on the nightstand, its red numbers glaring 3:08 a.m. into the gloom. She listened. At first she heard nothing but the rush of blood in her ears and the whisper of the HVAC system. The mansion always hummed with quiet, expensive life, hidden vents, silent security systems, all the invisible machinery that made the place run. Tonight the sound made her skin crawl. Then she heard it. A sharp, distant crack. Not loud, but wrong. Not part of the normal soundtrack of a sleeping house. It sounded like glass under stress, like a branch snapping, like something brittle being pushed past its limit. She held her breath. Another crack. Closer this time. Clean and high and ugly. Her body reacted before her brain fully caught up. She swung her feet out of bed, heart slamming against her ribs, and slid off the mattress. The wood floor was cold under her bare soles. Somewhere in the back of her mind, rational Sophia whispered that this was ridiculous, that she was safe in one of the most secure houses in New York, that rich people probably had weird noises all the time. The rest of her was already moving. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, fingers clumsy with sleep and fear. Her thumb hovered over Anthony's name in her recent calls. The door to her suite exploded inward. Sophia screamed, or tried to. The sound tangled in her throat, but it wasn't a stranger in the doorway. Anthony filled the frame, bare-chested, barefoot, wearing dark sweatpants and an expression she had never seen on his face before. Stripped, lethal focus. His gaze swept the room once and zeroed in on her exact location in the dark. "Down," he snapped. "Now." She didn't have time to move. He crossed the room in 3 strides. The window disintegrated. The first bullet punched through the glass with a scream, shards spraying inward in a glittering arc. Sophia saw it in a frozen slice of time. The window exploding, the curtain jerking, the faint flash from outside. And then Anthony hit her. He slammed into her with his full weight, arms wrapping around her waist as he drove them both to the floor. The impact knocked the air out of her lungs. Her shoulder clipped the side of the bed, pain flaring down her arm, but he twisted mid-fall, taking the worst of it himself, dragging her under him. They hit the rug hard. The breath whooshed out of her chest. Before she could inhale, his hand was at the back of her head, pressing her face into the thick fabric, shielding her skull from the floor. The second shot followed the first. This one hit the headboard with a sickening crack. Splinters rained down. A third, a fourth, a fifth punched into the bed, the wall, the dresser. Each gunshot detonated inside her bones, turning her insides to ice. "Don't move," Anthony growled into her hair. "Sophia, do not move." He wasn't lying on her. He was on top of her, his entire body a shield. She could feel every line of him. Solid chest pressed along her back, thighs pinning her legs to the floor, one forearm braced beside her head, the other arm cinched across her middle. The weight should have been suffocating. But the only thing she registered was the fact that there was now an entire, very large man between her and the window. Something pinged off the nightstand. The lamp shattered, plunging the room into absolute darkness. The icy November air rushed through the destroyed glass, carrying the sharp burn of gunpowder and the faint scent of wet grass from the lawn outside. Her mind tried to insist this wasn't real, that she was still in her crappy apartment, waking from a bad dream, that shooting in mansions only happened in movies, and the violent corners of the internet she consciously avoided. Another burst of gunfire obliterated that illusion. The mattress above them jerked and tore as bullets slammed into it, feathers and stuffing raining down on them in a choking cloud. Sophia's fingers dug into the rug. She wanted to clamp her hands over her ears, to block out the sound, but Anthony had both of her arms pinned beneath his chest. All she could do was stare at the tiny patch of rug directly in front of her face and try to remember how to breathe. The shots stopped as suddenly as they'd started. Silence sprawled huge and heavy over the room, broken only by the ragged sound of their breathing and the faint rattle of shattered glass settling. Sophia's ears rang. Somewhere far away, she heard a dog barking, then the muffled echo of men shouting, short, sharp commands, feet pounding over grass and stone. The security team, she realized distantly. They were moving, responding, doing the jobs Anthony paid them to do. "Stay down," he said again, voice low and steady right next to her ear. "You don't move until I say." She nodded against the rug. Her throat was too tight for words. He shifted slightly, and she felt him reach toward the nightstand with one hand, stretching above them. Wood scraped. Something clacked. When his arm came back into her blurred field of vision, he was holding a gun. Of course he kept a gun in her room. Of course he did. This was his world. "You didn't go to bed unarmed when half the city wanted what you had," he spoke, and she realized there was something in his other ear, an earpiece she hadn't noticed before in the chaos. "Talk to me," he ordered. "East side. Status." Static crackled. Then Daniel's voice clipped and calm. "Perimeter breach on the east lawn. 2 shooters confirmed. Teams engaging. Stay with Miss Grant. We'll clear it." "How many down?" Anthony's voice dropped even lower. "1 neutralized. 1 runner. We're pursuing. Vehicle seen leaving the north gate." More static. "No impact on the main structure besides the guest wing." Anthony exhaled slowly, the sound hot against Sophia's neck. "Keep them off the house. I want eyes on every angle. No one gets near this room." "Copy." The voices faded as Daniel switched channels. Anthony kept his body over hers for another long minute, listening, waiting. Sophia counted his heartbeats against her back, the rhythmic thud somehow keeping her anchored to reality. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. This time they were inside, the muffled thunder of boots on polished floors. The door to her suite, already hanging broken, was shoved fully open. "Clear," someone called. "Boss, it's us." Anthony finally shifted. He rolled just enough to take his weight off her completely and pushed himself up onto one knee, keeping his body between her and the window. The gun trained on the darkness beyond the shredded curtains. "Front," Daniel said from the doorway, breathless but controlled. "We've got you." Sophia turned her head just far enough to see him, framed by 2 members of the security team in dark clothes, weapons ready. Their eyes swept the room, taking in the destroyed window, the ripped mattress, the bullet holes, the 2 bodies on the floor. "Any hits inside?" one of the men asked, voice tight. Anthony shook his head. "She's okay." It took Sophia a second to realize he was including himself in that assessment, even though she could see, even through the dimness and the adrenaline, a darker patch on his left forearm where blood soaked into his skin. "We need to move you both." Daniel stepped cautiously around the glass, coming closer. "This room is compromised. Safe room until we finish the sweep." Anthony shifted his weight and finally looked down at her fully. The control on his face didn't match his eyes. His eyes were wild, terrified and furious, and relieved all at once. "Can you stand?" he asked. She tried to sit up. Her muscles trembled badly. When she pushed herself upright, her shoulder screamed in protest, a hot line of pain reminding her of where she'd hit the bed frame. The rest of her body felt weirdly distant, as if it belonged to someone else. "I think so," she managed. He tucked the gun into the back of his waistband and slid one arm under her knees, the other behind her shoulders. "I can walk," she protested reflexively. His arms tightened. "I know. Humor me." He lifted her off the floor like she weighed nothing. Her fingers, traitorous and shaking, clutched at his bare shoulder. From this angle, she could see the full damage to her room. Glass everywhere, curtains torn, one of her framed photos smashed. The bullet hole in the headboard sat like a black eye inches above where her pillow had been. Her stomach lurched. If he'd been 30 seconds slower. She pressed her face against his chest, unable to look anymore. They moved fast. The security guys formed a moving wall around them, weapons out, eyes scanning every angle. The hallway lights were on now, harsh against Sophia's overtaxed senses. She caught glimpses of other doors ajar, shadows moving, the controlled